Welcome. My name is Paula Curry, and I am the Vice President of Procurement for Second Life Mac. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Second Life Mac is a buyback company. We're the most experienced Apple buyback company, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes of why that is so. But before we do that, I want to begin with my very favorite commercial from Apple. I spent 8 years at Apple, and this is Apple's first stab at marketing, if you will. And as we all know, they're a marketing giant and doing a phenomenal job. But this really is my absolute favorite video and commercial from Apple.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So we're here to talk to you today about buyback and how we do things differently. You have a lot of choices when it comes to buyback companies, and I want to talk to you about why Second Life Mac, but I don't want to talk at you. From my experience in the industry, the most valuable thing to me in sitting in the audience is to talk to people who have been through it and some industry experts. So we've put that panel together. One of the things I did want to share with you before we get started is Scott Paga is the president and CEO of Second Life Mac, and Scott and I were very intentional when we decided to put together our development procurement team. So we have 7 directors of procurement across the country, and we were very intentional about who we hired for those spots throughout Second Life Mac. Kevin Edmond is the first employee. He is critical to the success of Second Life Mac. He knows the business inside and out. And then we went out and hired not just any Apple employee, we hired the best of the best. And we hired Apple account executives throughout the country who cover the entire United States, Canada, and Europe. And they understand the buyback very, very well. And that team is, again, a team of 7 directors of procurement that span the country. They're not, what we believe and what we have found with this group of talented people is they understand what you need, what each company needs, whether you be an enterprise or an education customer, what you need in your return on investment and what you need to sustain your current fleet of Apple products. It is very critical that we understand that working side by side with you and your teams to be able to provide you with the most amount of money for your fleet of Apple products. So I want to talk about how that happens, what goes right, what goes wrong, and what we've learned. So with the team that we have hired, we have over 75 years of experience with Apple, and we have done over $1 billion worth of transactions. So an incredible amount of experience that we have here. We are at booth number 2. If you want to come visit us, we would love to talk to you and introduce you to your respective director of procurement. And we also are giving away the new AirPod Pros and a Veti cooler set thing. Cool thing. So whatever that is, we're giving away that. So we've designed our session to be informative from these industry experts. There's still a lot of questions around buyback. Again, we're a very immature market. It's only 4 years old. So a lot of people have entered this space very quickly, and it's who and why and how do we do it that I want to talk to you about today that's very important. So on our panel, we have 3 clients. We have a director of procurement from Second Life Mac, and we have 1 individual from Jamf. So I'd like to start with Megan Finnegan Ratliff to introduce herself.
Hi there. Oh. Hello? Is it working?
Yes.
Hi there. My name is Megan Finnegan Ratliff. I come to Second Life Mac from Apple Inc. I was there for 13 years, covering half of the state of Ohio. So in those 75 plus years of Apple account executive, I cover 13 of them. So I'm really excited to be here today. One reason I came over to a buyback was that for many years, especially in the K-12 market, buybacks are so needed because of the dollars have to go back into the budget. And I saw a lot of buybacks not go in favor of the customer. And so I wanted to make sure when I came over here that my voice was heard and that, you know, we were making sure that the customer was the number one priority when we were doing the buyback.
My name is Matt Dunlap. I'm a technology coordinator at Fairview Park City Schools. That's in Ohio. It's west side of Cleveland. And I manage about 2,000 devices, 1,000 iPads, and 1,000 Macs in a K-12 district. We're one-to-one K through 5 with iPads, and then grades 6 through 12 with MacBooks. And all of our teachers have MacBooks as well. And we basically wouldn't be able to do what we do without buybacks. And so it's just a critical part of the K-12 success that we have. So very important.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Foudy. I am the Innovative Learning Specialist at the Trumbull Career and Technical Center, also in Northeast Ohio. Browns won. Finally. We are a career tech high school of about 1,000 students in grades 11 and 12 with kids learning heavy industry skills, keeping iPads down around drywall dust, all the way up to app development and programming. And students come to our school because they want to learn with their hands or they want to learn through projects. They don't want to sit and get. So we chose iPad in 2011 to keep our students engaged from the first bell to the last bell, to make them authors and creators. And we've been really, the buyback process has allowed us to keep refreshing our iPads every 2 years and our labs of Macs every 2 years. And we have labs of iMacs for our graphic design or interactive multimedia and my students in the app development program.
Thanks, Brian.
Got the mic thing. I'm Cole Turner. I'm the account executive here at Jamf. I've worked here for about 7 years. When I started, I was employee 160, and I believe we're around 1,200 people now. So it's been really great to see the growth over the years. I work in the education sector, so basically mainly the Midwest, but I've kind of worked all over the nation throughout my time here, and excited to work with Second Life Mac and help out how I can.
My name is Sandy Hinding. I'm with a K-12 district about 20 minutes from here. We have 5,000 students. We have 8 schools. We are one-to-one iPad from grade 1 through 8. And our teachers are about 90% Macs.
Great. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with data security. So Brian Foudy, data security in schools is a concern as, I'm sorry. Data security in schools is a concern, and we know it's a huge concern for enterprises as well. What are the fears of organizations when it comes to training in devices that contain user data? And how would a breach impact your organization?
Well, my biggest fear would be that a student turns in their device and it didn't get wiped, and there would still be student information, personally identifying information on the device that would hand out, and then I imagine my school district, I'd be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
I sat through a briefing though in Cupertino a couple years ago, and with the Secure Enclave managing those algorithms for the fingerprint, once we hit erase all content and settings, it's really not something we worry about. It is something that as kids turn in, I have a group of students that help me, they just make sure it's been wiped and it goes back to that setup screen, but it's not really, it would be really bad, but it's not really something that we actively worry about in my district.
Great. And Megan, can you talk about, from our perspective, how can customers be sure that all data is erased on the devices that when we receive them and when they're traded in?
Sure. I would say our number one priority is once the devices are received is the full data erasure of the equipment. So our data erasure software, which is Blanco, it erases to 25 plus standards of the Department of Defense and provides tamper-proof reports to meet security and regulatory compliance requirements. The nice thing about it too is that we can provide a data erasure report or a certificate of data erasure upon request. So we do that with all of our buybacks, obviously, once requested.
Great. And Cole, if you could tell us, what role does the MDM play in data security during the trade-in process?
Well, we're the management process that actually kind of triggers these wipes or, just keep getting rid of all the data on the devices. So whether you're encrypting through file vault or you're going through, secure wiping processes through policies, commands, wiping devices through iOS, we're just kind of the mechanism that kind of gets that to that end state so it's brand new, ready for the next cycle.
Great. And Cole, could you expand just telling us a little bit about Jamf? We know you're the leader in MDM. What's changed since last year?
Well, yeah, so you're all here. You're all obviously fans of Jamf, so I don't want to brag too much about our company anymore. You've already heard. But, we've been doing this for almost 20 years now, Apple first, Apple best. I think a big kind of stat to kind of talk about or to go with is that in an industry where people are going to new trends, jumping ship, going to Chromebooks, dare I say it, things of that nature, where there's not a lot of customer loyalty, 95% of customers stick around with Jamf and use us year after year. And it's because our product works and we take care of our customers. So that's important to us and that's a big piece of it. But something that's really changed in the last couple of years is, for people that are around when we kind of first started, it was the Casper Suite and kind of an imaging solution. And how we've really evolved over time is now we kind of rebranded as Jamf and then Jamf Pro. And now we have a kind of a portfolio of different things that we can offer our clients. So it's Jamf Pro, it's Jamf School, Jamf Connect. So it's really meant for any situation and any kind of just problem you have, we're there to solve it. So I think that's really the big piece of what we've done recently.
Great. Thank you. So now we're going to move to budgeting for trade-ins and talking about how you do that. So Sandy, this is to you, how do schools and enterprises budget today for technology purchases?
So we lease all of our Apple equipment. We are on a 4-year cycle for Macs and a 3-year cycle for iPads. But when we write the lease, we write a 4-year lease for the iPads, and then we sell them after 3 years. So that buyback is really important because it actually pays that final lease payment. So it works really great, if provided you get enough money to do that. And then same thing with the Macs. We do a 5-year lease, but we resell at 4 years. Mm-hmm. And there's, so far we've been doing this, we've been through a few cycles now, and it basically the buyback pays that last payment.
Right.
So it works really great. Keeps us sustainable, keeps us right on the path, no surprises.
Yeah, and it's critical, and it also keeps you on the same platform of the technology mm-hmm. as well. Great, thank you for that. This is for Matt, how can schools and enterprises improve their budgeting process to make technology budgets sustainable?
I think like Sandy said, one of the biggest changes that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years is really leasing. Whenever we went to that model, it really changed things. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we had the same devices. What we did before leasing was we would buy one model one year, then we would have enough money to buy a different model the next year and a different model. And it's really a nightmare to manage, even if you're still using Macs and iPads. Before that we were not, and it was even worse. And so it was just a real problem. So I think with budgeting, especially when you're using leasing and when you can get consistent dollar amounts for buybacks, you can really show your buying departments that the money you're going to spend is going to be pretty consistent over the years, and it makes it much easier for them to plan for that in the long run.
Great, thank you. So Brian, back to you. How do schools and enterprises decide when to trade in their devices?
Well, I think there's probably a couple approaches, at least for schools. I've seen some schools, they keep the device as long as they can, as long as it's functional, and the thought, at least from my colleagues, is that, they're maximizing their investment dollars. But in my district, what we've actually found is that we flip our devices every 2 years so that our students always have the most up-to-date technology and so that we maximize our buyback dollars. And that has been really effective for us in our budgeting. We've actually cut our costs for operations once we went to a one-to-one versus the old way with paper and pencil and all that. And it's because when you look at iPad and the total cost of ownership, it's very affordable.
Right. So, in just talking with Brian and also Matt, through some of their buybacks. If you think about the release cycle of Apple, we all know the release cycle. It's no secret. There's a release cycle of an iPad every March and September, right? So if you're looking at a buyback, and all of a sudden you're looking at 2 or 3 years or 4 years down the road, even 2 years, that's your 4-year revisions behind the iPad you bought just 2 years ago. So that's why I say at the beginning, 4 years in this industry is a blink of the eye, because buyback companies have only been around for 4 years. It's very, very new, and we want to be here to explain that to you, to say, hey, we know this industry very well. We have worked side by side with a lot of these customers that are up here, obviously, on how to build in that sustainability, how to build in the return on investment. If you are a school, or even an enterprise, we know you're getting a lot of pressure because of the price of how much Apple costs, right? The one thing that people say when you walk in with an Apple, when you're trying to prove to your executive committee, is the one kickback you get that a lot of people don't want to say in the room is, why shouldn't we go with Apple? The one is they're very expensive, right? Isn't that what you get? Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah. And then you're left to say, how am I going to combat this? Because it is the best device, right? But when you really break it down, and that's what our team of experts have done for the 75 years of combined experience that we have, we did that every single day at Apple. And we broke it down, and for us to win against a Chrome device of $150, $125 to $200 day in and day out, when you're putting us up against a $1,000 laptop of Apple, or really with an iPad, when you get into an iPad, it's $294, but then you have to have a case, then you have to have Jamf, then you have to have this. So you're about $400, right? So how do you create an ROI? The answer to that is this magic of a flip, what we call a flip. So it is that life cycle of when you flip and when is that tipping point. So the tipping point is that 2 to 3 year mark where you're going to make the most money. Now, that's not to say Second Life Mac is the only company today in our entire industry that still buys back iPad 2s and white MacBooks. Shocking, right? Yeah. I'm even shocked about it. But we do, because we believe that there is value in giving that to you as customers. So I wanted to point that out. All right, so back to our panel here. And I lost my place. Where are we?
How can MDM help reduce costs?
Okay, cool. That was Cole, not cool.
You can call me cool, it's fine.
Hey, cool. How can MDM help to reduce technology costs, please?
Well, it helps you keep an inventory of everything you have. So when you're purchasing devices at any time, I know a lot of us talking about leasing and doing it in bulk leases or bulk times, but a lot of districts throughout the years have bought devices. They buy 5 iPads here, they buy 10 Macs here, they buy these devices at all these different times. And how do you keep track of these things and how old they are, the models, where they're at, what's going on? And we're kind of the process that brings them into that. So not only that, but applications, everything there, we can kind of keep track of everything that you're working with, just so you have that central management. You know what you have, when you have it. And also, I would also say just too is you're going to invest in this Apple hardware, and you're going to spend the money for the best experience, and we bring that out. We deploy the apps to the devices, we get the Wi-Fi, the security settings, everything they need to take care of what they have, and it actually works. So you don't have 10 students or 10 teachers or anybody running to IT being, this doesn't work, it's disrupting classrooms, it's doing all this, everything is as it should be. So, yeah.
And one more on that before we close out this session. How does Jamf help in de-enrolling devices and getting them ready for pickup. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
To make sure that they're de-enrolled.
And yeah, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, we through several different ways, whether it's Mac or iOS, we can trigger those wipes to the devices to get them to those end states. So, like I said, on the Mac, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Remote commands, policies, iOS, you can do the remote commands to mass wipe devices. So, lots of different ways. But you know that when you're using our product and you need these devices to be blank, ready to move with no data on there, we're going to take care of that for you.
Great, thank you. All right, so now we're going to move to the trade-in process itself, right? How does this work? What does it look like? And so the first question I'm going to have the clients answer first, and then Megan, I would like you to wrap up. So the question is, what does the trade-in process look like from your point of view? How long does it take, and what is involved? Matt.
What's nice about it is we don't have to do a lot, That's what really helps us, and that's what they're so great at, is that basically we just need to, we use Jamf, so we use Jamf to wipe devices, and then we just get the devices in a room, and that's it, and then they come and take care of the rest. They package them, box them up, take care of everything, and so it's really nothing that's a tax on our staff or anything like that. In that process. That was my biggest concern, honestly, the first time that we did it, was that it was going to be a big hassle, and it really wasn't, so it was a big help.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, it takes me just a couple of days so I can bring all our students in, and being in a career tech center where there's a lot of heavy industry, I have to make sure they're not damaged and cycle those out. And we have to get them cleaned up because our students, they're working in welding or auto service or one of the other ones, sometimes they get a little dirty. But what's great is that as a one-man show, because I'm a teacher and our IT department wanted nothing to do with the iPads when they first came to our district. I have to do it all by myself. It's me and about 5 students, and couldn't be easier. I send the remote command and the JSS right from my iPad to wipe them, and kids just drop them off, and we put in the containers you provide, and then off they go.
Great.
And we're ready to get our next set.
Great. Sandy?
So flexibility is really important for us because this past spring we had several buildings under construction, so we had a whirlwind of other things that had to be done. We were also trading in 1,500 iPads. Boxes came in advance. We had some schools where they didn't have time to even take the cases off the iPads. We tend to hold back the chargers because with middle schoolers with iPads, they lose and break those a lot. So it's nice that was a small ding if we didn't include the chargers in the buyback. So basically what I do is take them out of the pre-stages, but I leave them in DEP until I get the spreadsheet back from the vendor, and then I take them completely out of DEP once I know they actually got sold. So all those missing and the stolen devices are still in my system until I can track them down. So flexibility is huge. Being able to, we also had to hold back some devices to get through summer school, so that was nice because we did a second pickup. So it was great.
Great. Wonderful. And Megan, how does it work from your perspective in getting customers ready, different times of the year? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I would say that the nice thing about the process is that it can happen anytime. I think a lot of people think that, with the buyback process, a lot of it is coming in June, July, which that is a majority of it. But, it's happening all year round. And that's what we always try to tell people is that even if you have 50 devices in a closet, they're still worth something. And if you're not using them, they're just kind of depreciating as the time goes by. So, we can pick up 50 devices, we can pick up 5,000 devices. So I would say really every buyback is completely different, especially given the time of the year. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, some of the services that we offer is that we can come out on site when the students or, your staff turn in their devices, and we can do all the packing up, we can help with it, we can uncase, that's all free of charge. And so we were just on site the other day, and they had palletized, and they had wiped, and they had done all of that, and that's something that we do for free. So take advantage of that while you can, rather than, having all this extra work put on, the district or the enterprise.
Great. I'm going to keep you talking here just for a minute. When organizations trade in devices, how do they know how much money they will get for their devices? Is the first question. And what happens when the price they receive falls short of what was promised?
So when I was at Apple, that was one of the hardest selling points, because if you've done a buyback and it's gone wrong, you're very wary of it. You don't want to continue doing it because, maybe you'll give it a second try, but maybe not. And so when we would recommend someone, we could never get anybody to do a guarantee. And that was a really big thing for our customers, because what they were doing is they were giving the devices to this company that they don't really know that much about. And, they were trusting my advice to give it to them and saying, it could be an A grade, it could be an F grade, you could get 100,000, you could get 5,000. And so when I came over to Second Life Mac, I pretty much
Demanded. Like she yelled in a meeting. We have to do this or else, yeah. Well, anyway, go ahead, sorry.
So demanded that I believed that every quote going out the door should have a guarantee on it. So that you can at least go back to your treasurer, you can go back to your school board and say, we are for sure getting this. But then another spin on it is I wanted to say, but if the devices are in better shape, are we able to give the upside once we go in and we do the grading? And that is something that we've been able to do. So we can do it that way, or we can also do a lump sum. Some districts just say, I just need a check right now, and like kind of say what Sandy said, I need this to pay off the lease. This is the amount we have to have. And the nice thing about it is that we're going to be completely transparent. Either we can do it or we can't do it. We're not going to say, we think we can do it, and we're going to bring these devices in and we're going to give it a whirl. You're going to know up front, rather than, having to go back to your treasurer or school board and say, we signed a new lease, but we can't get out of this old lease because we still owe another, $50,000.
Great.
So.
Thank you very much. Sandy, this is to you. What is your advice on how to vet a buyback company, and what makes you trust that they will do what they promised?
I think the only thing you can say is experience, and, talk to people around you that have used vendors, because, once you've been through the process and you see what they've done, then you know that it's a good vendor. But you have to rely on, you have to do bids, and value, of course, is important, but all of those things that maybe aren't part of the dollar, the taking off the cases for me, I'll tell you, is huge. I'll just say, my thumbs, thank you. But it's the added value of the flexibility and all that. So I think that's. And the other thing I would say is that when I do my DEP process in Jamf, I do them by purchase year, so that when it comes time for resale, they're all nicely in one little place where I can send out my wipe command and they all get wiped.
Perfect. And can you share with us one tip, Sandy, that makes your trade-in process go smoothly?
Again, the flexibility of the vendor. It was chaos this spring, and it was just one thing that I didn't have to worry about. It was, a few techs in the buildings helped kind of guide things, and we had multiple location pickups, and we had a different thing going on in every building, and it was just, I didn't even have to think about it. It just went.
Good. All right, so few more, and then we'll open it up for questions. Let's see, from Matt, should organizations engrave devices, and what are the drawbacks, if any?
Well, for me, that's a pretty easy one, is no, you shouldn't engrave. I don't do it with personal devices, and I don't do it with school devices, because, I know that either way I'm going to sell them to somebody, and they don't want my name on it. So, we've never done that. I know some like to do it. They think it's going to, somehow save their device if it's stolen or something like that. But that's not the way you're going to save them. So engraving for me is a definite no.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian, give me one tip on how organizations can get the most from their Apple devices.
All right, I got a twofer for you.
Okay, go right ahead.
It's twice as good. Get really good cases. As somebody who works with students working with heavy industry, a good case is the difference between a saved device and really getting to know a repair place really well, like on a first name basis. And flip as soon and as frequently as you can afford, because the students will take advantage of all the leverage of the new technologies and the hardware.
Great, thank you. All right, so the three of you, Brian, Matt, and Sandy, finish the sentence. When it comes to trading in used Apple devices, I wish I had known.
I wish I knew how easy it was going to be for me as a one-person operation with our iPad. I was really concerned about that, but it's just a couple days of seeing a lot of students.
Great. Matt?
I wish I knew how much money we were going to get back, because we probably could have changed to better devices a lot sooner than we did.
Sandy?
Actually, I have one that I'd still like to know the answer to. So when we started the leasing process, we were in desperate straits for technology, so we did very large purchases. And the thing that we're still trying to undo that we did is those giant forklift replacements. So breaking the leases down so that you're doing more of a, what would be awesome would be 20% every year for 5 years, or 25 every 4 years, instead of doing those 3,000 iPads. But one thing that's changed from Apple's perspective is we have an Apple order in right now for teacher laptops, and that order is going to the board on the 18th of November, and we're probably going to have those computers before December 1st. So Apple has really changed the way they ship. You know, we've all had that, don't get your new budget till July, so guess what you're going to get on August 1st? The worst possible time to get new devices. But now if you sign the lease for slightly more interest rate, you actually get your devices in March, and now actually almost in November. So we can have those devices out to our high flyers and our beta testers and get those devices pretty much rolled out before school is out, instead of scrambling it back to school to try to get things going when you're doing all the other things and you're doing things with kids and stuff. So that has been a huge game changer for us.
Good, good. That's great. All right, so those are all the questions that I had for the panel. I wanted to open up to the audience to see if anybody had any questions you would like to ask us before we wrap up.
Everybody's hungry.
I know, lunch is coming. Hi.
Good morning. So I work at Northeastern University. We do a handful of managed lab machines, as well as faculty, staff, Macs as well. And we've talked a lot about going from purchasing hundreds of iMacs at a time to leasing those. And part of that lease quote is that Apple will take them back at the end. And I guess my big question is, how does Second Life Mac sort of, I guess, offer is it a competing value versus what, like at the end of the lease, I send these back to Apple versus to you? Yeah, that's what it was. How does that work with you guys?
Yeah, so there's a couple. There's a couple different options on that. We have actually worked with quite a few that have done the fair market value lease, and so kind of what Sandy said, like at the end, you're going to know exactly what those are going to be worth, but then also what you owe. And so we can kind of work with you once you get a little bit closer to say, okay, you know, it makes sense to probably go with Second Life Mac. The three that we've purchased from, they were a K-12, they were in a higher ed, but it made more sense for them to come for us than to actually do the fair market value.
But you can get two quote. You can get a quote from us, and you have the quote from them, obviously, and then you compare the two. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
My question was on the same lines as that, but I wanted to add on. So I work for Intel, doing the whole Mac life cycle there. Mm-hmm. And one of my questions is about the erasure product that you're utilizing, because, you know, working with Intel, they usually don't want any drive leaving, and now that they're soldered onto the Mac, we're having a problem with doing buybacks and stuff like that based on we have to have an erasure product that's added into it. So the erasure product that you're using with, and you said it's DoD certified and all this other stuff, mm-hmm. I would like to get some more information on that.
Yeah, and if you want to have that offline, Kevin is here in the audience, and he runs that team for us at Second Life Mac. But just in short, to answer your question, we do business with one of the military, a very large military organization, mm-hmm. and a very large financial institution. So when you're talking about those two, erasing the data obviously is critical for everyone, but they drill down and peel that onion back all the way to the core to make sure it's safe. Kevin Edmond, if you want to raise your hand in the back, if you could stop by and see him, that's a pretty lengthy conversation, but yes, we'd love to have that with you. And then you can enter to win the AirPod Pros.
Yeah, I need those.
And the Veti cooler. So you have to stop by and see us for that. What other questions? Anything? One, two, okay.
Short here. Hi, I'm Joey Hogeen, IT Director for Client Support Services, Monterey, California. Can you guys have the conference there next year instead of here?
Yeah, it's a little cold.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Done and done.
So I was just on your site. Do you plan in the future to do a buyback for Apple TV devices?
We currently buy back Apple
Oh,
TV
you do?
devices. Yep.
Okay.
It's just probably not on the site, but no, we do buy back the Apple TVs.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey again. I'm Austin. I'm from Pickerington Local Schools in Central Ohio. For you guys, have you guys had any issues with our purchasing is an entirely separate budget from our personal budget where we would be doing the buybacks and the sellbacks. So have you guys had any experience kind of like rectifying those two sides? Because that's going to be our big issue is in developing a cycle, in pulling all of that together, and the fact that they are two separate columns of money.
So before you do that, so would you like to receive the check to put it in your budget? Is that what you're saying?
That's what we've been doing
Okay.
historically, is that if we have to do, purchasing typically comes from one side, and then we do all of the maintenance
Right.
and oversight and onboarding of everything else.
Yes.
But when it comes to getting rid of that stuff, it comes back into our budget. More recently, we've had to take our budget for some purchasing, which is strange because that's not how we were supposed to be doing it. So it's just, I don't know.
Well, and then I'll let these guys answer, but we can do whatever you'd like. We deal with Cleveland Municipal Schools. They have over 25,000 iPads up there, and they are school-based budgets, so each individual school of their 108 schools own that budget. So it is very important for them that check for their school does not get deposited into central funds because
Right.
it'll never find its way back
Exactly.
to that little school, right? And so we actually, we hand deliver the check, or we make sure that the check comes directly to your department. So do you guys have something to add
I
there?
mean, it's somewhat similar with us, but it's just something I've talked to our treasurer about, and so she's just literally able to move that money for us to make it happen. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I think
if
that's
yours
going
would
to be the good
willing.
thing for us, is that our treasurer really likes us.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always good when the
We're
treasurer
very
likes
good
you.
friends with the treasurer,
Yeah.
so, yeah, all right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Adam Caudill. I work for Cover My Meds. One thing that we're actually looking for is giving our employees the option of purchasing a used Mac after it has been securely erased. Is that something you guys have facilitate or work with that sort of thing at all? And then like the surplus that are not purchased by employees will be then?
Yeah, Megan?
Yeah, so that's something that we do for sure. Usually what a lot of times they'll do is they'll get the quote and they'll see the value of what it's worth, and then that's what they'll try to sell it for. The district or the enterprise will try to sell it for the employees, and then whatever, it is, okay. And then what you have the surplus for is that we can definitely buy those back.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. That's what my district does. Okay, and then now, as far as like actually facilitating that process, that's something where you guys would then just purchase the surplus, or would you have any activity in the like securely erasing and then preparing those for sale?
We can do it one of two ways. You can do it on your own and say, we have X amount that we want to sell, and everybody says, send you, however you do it.
Yeah.
And they say, I want my machine, or I want this machine. Or we can buy them all back, and then we erase them, we clean them, and literally, we were just in a meeting, we had a quarterly meeting, month or a couple weeks ago, and you know how we grade them A, B, C, D. I don't know if you know that, but we have a grading scale a lot of times. And Kevin brought in these laptops for us to view to figure out which was A, B, C. And after they're cleaned and ready to go to market, you can't really tell the difference. They look like brand new machines. It's amazing. So what some of the folks do in enterprise is they send them in to us, and Brian, you can do this too if you didn't know that, but we will clean them up. We will make sure that they are practically like brand new, and then send them back to you. You say, I need 50 of those back, and then you sell them for that amount of money. Did you say you're from Cover My Meds?
Yes.
In Ohio?
Yes.
Okay, this is not an Ohio-based session, but it's just turning out very ironic that Pickerington's here at Cover My Meds, 2 people on the panel. Megan and I are both from Ohio. It's not an Ohio
We love
thing.
Max in Ohio.
We didn't stack it.
So, yeah. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Let's talk later. Stop by the booth. Okay. I'd like to talk to you. Any other questions? Wonderful.